Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Today's video I want to talk about something that some of you are just going to think, it's another one of these kind of political sort of current event rants. And some of you like those better than the prepping and homesteading videos that I do. But I hope that both sides of this, both opinions will stick around, because I think today's video is for all of you. Yeah, it is a current event thing, but it's certainly something us preparedness-minded homesteaders need to definitely be aware of, because it could quite possibly be one of the more important things that's happening in the world around us today that could have an insurmountable impact on us in the future, very possibly. And what I'm talking about is what's going on with the military. As probably many of you know, there's been a lot of things in the news here lately on changes in the military and different types of training and trying to teach different levels of tolerance and wokeness and all these new terms that they're throwing around. In fact, Tucker Carlson, as some of you watch, has been getting some heat on his comments that he made several days ago on what's going on with the military. And so I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about how dangerous this path is that we are on, because I think it's extremely dangerous. Before I do this, I want to make it very clear that in no way what I'm saying today is to disparage any current or former military personnel. I hold you in the highest respects. And this isn't knocking anyone that's in or has been in the military. In fact, from my personal experience here lately, those of you that are either current or former military are probably more upset about the things that are happening than anyone else. And it's not just something to be upset of because something that maybe you were part of and that you loved is kind of getting tarnished. This is much, much bigger than that, folks. This is could be the very thing that keeps us separated, or keeps a line drawn between us and the forces of tyranny and global, governance and takeover, and these very progressive Marxist communist ideas. Most of you in your lifetime have probably talked about or thought about or made note of all the things that's happened in history in other countries. And I'm just going to name off a couple that are the obvious ones. Nazi Germany, communist Russia, communist China. You could look at North Korea, Vietnam, so on and so forth, Cuba. And sure, there were many times these charismatic leaders that had these, very evil and progressive ideas. But those leaders wouldn't have been able to do anything if they didn't have someone on the ground to enforce their ideas. And that's where the military came into place. The military and the police, and in many of these countries, they are one and the same. And there's probably been times that you've said, how is it that these soldiers that are just fathers and sons and brothers and uncles of the people around them, how can they get to the point that they follow through with these kind of orders? It's a common little saying that, I was just following orders. It's talked about a lot with Nazi Germany, and that has come about over history through the different trials, even current ones, where they have tried former Nazi officers or former Nazi soldiers for war crimes. And usually their defense is I was just following orders, right? How can you can't, make me guilty of something that I did because I was just following orders. And then here in America, it's always different. So many people always say, yeah, but America's different because our soldiers, our boys in uniform are different. They are patriots. They statistically are more patriotic than just the average person, and they love this country and they love the Constitution, and they would never follow through with these orders. That our troops would never ever turn on its citizens. And I've always been, issued kind of a cautious warning to not make that your only line of defense, that to not fall for that line too hard, because I don't believe that that is always going to be the case. I want to start this off, even though I've been going for a few minutes already, with some emails. And I'm going to read parts of the emails. These were not sent to me. These were sent to a reporter that some of you are probably very familiar with, by a guy by the name of Jack Posobiec. This guy is well known on places like Twitter. He reports for Only America News, OAN, and he's a former naval intelligence officer, so he has a military background. And I find the guy to be probably pretty truthful out there. He's not your typical kind of reporter, certainly not a CNN type, and not even a Fox News type of reporter. Anyways, in the last several days, because he's really been talking a lot about all these changes going on in the military, he's been getting emails from people that are currently in the military, and they, knowing that he's a former officer himself, they've been kind of speaking out about what's happening currently, right now, the kind of training, the changes that are happening just in the last couple of months. And so I want to read some of these emails to you, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with. You probably all know, I mean, there's still National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. There's a fortress built around the Capitol. And we won't go into that here, but I'm sure you all have your opinions on that. But since then, since the president took office, the new president, you all know about, probably at least know about this, that there was a 90-day stand-down order given. And what that stand-down order was meant to do was to basically reevaluate the military and come up with new training on training our troops to be more tolerant, to weed out extremism, to be more acceptance of, alternative lifestyles, racism, so on and so forth. And there's been a lot of new stuff that's come out about this just recently, and a lot of the top brass in the military, the things that are coming out of these offices, it's a little startling. But I want to read these emails, and then I'm going to talk about the dangers of this path that we are going down. This first one, of course, he's redacted the names or any information that could connect this person to who he is. It says, I am blank, at a joint command in wherever. Our extremism stand down was done virtually and consisted of several slides. The emphasis was on January 6th. Examples provided of extremists were some white supremacists, I think in California, who scrawled racist comments on a car and shot someone. Boogaloo boys, etc. Someone asked about BLM at this training that this officer was going to. And the moderator said BLM wasn't the same because their cause was genuine, unlike the insurrectionists on January 6th. He also talked about disinformation from right-wing media, QAnon, and etc. Nothing about people in uniform who supported jihad. Nothing about people in uniform who supported BLM or Antifa and the summer riots. Nothing about people in uniform who openly defied or disparaged President Trump. So what this guy is saying, they're going through this extremism stand-down training to teach tolerance and all this kind of stuff. And they're only focused on the right side of training. And this is something that over the last couple of months have been coming out a lot. But this is evidence from the actual training. But I've been hearing about this, that they're talking about only focusing, when they were questioning all the National Guard troops in Washington, D.C., remember that? They were going in and questioning their loyalty. They were only questioning them and seeing if any of them had right-leaning political affiliations. They didn't care if you were a Democrat or far-left socialist or anything like that. They were wanting to know if you were a right-leaning conservative. They were asking about that. Here's another one. I'm not going to read the whole one because this is a long email. But says that, and this guy's been in for 19 years. He's getting ready to retire. He's an officer, and I believe in this one it indicates that he's possibly a pilot. And he says that the first was when we did this useless stand down. Oh, sorry, I'm starting the wrong spot. The only examples of extremism that was presented at this stand down training was right-wing extremist groups or white supremacist groups. January 6th was called an insurrection and sedition, while what went on during the summer of 2020, this last year, was called the George Floyd protests. I only spoke when called upon by my commander during our small group session because my responses didn't fit the narrative of the training. We moved on to the next point quickly after I was done talking. When our leadership team small group was asked if we had ever witnessed extremism in service, none of us, all of us have been in over 15 years, answered, or that we all answered a resounding no. The dialogue then switched to change the definition of extremism so that it would have to include sexual discrimination, abuse, or LGBT discrimination as forms of extremism. I pushed back in this expanded definition, but we were then re-asked if we had seen extremism in our service with this appropriate definition. We still pushed back and said no. We were provided means to report. Extremist behavior and given examples of seeing people's Facebook pages, Twitter feeds, etc. to report on it. Basically, what he's saying here is that they're told that now, these soldiers, they're being encouraged to report on each other. So if they hear any kind of extremist talk from their fellow soldier or airman or sailor, that they need to report that. Said, I, along with few others, objected to this premise and stated that this makes us big brother and this will erode our military trust. We were ignored, and the definition was stated to us again, and the means to report this was reiterated and emphasized. This guy says that he'll be retiring next year, and he's basically very ashamed of what the military is becoming. The point to what I'm getting at, folks, for many years, a lot of us patriots have said, well, it could get bad, but I think in the very last moment, our military will pull through and will be that wall that protect us from whatever these evil forces are. I'm here to tell you, folks, that may not be the case. It sounds to me like that they're doing a pretty good job of basically brainwashing. Maybe that's not the right term, but realigning the thinking of our troops. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of resistance. But eventually the ones that are in now will, serve their time and get out. And then the new ones coming in, I'm sure they'll be screened somehow, or they'll be encouraged from the very beginning to follow this line of thinking. I know that I may sound a little extremist on here right now, but I don't think it's too far to jump from what they're talking about right now with all this tolerance of sexual orientation or racism or your right-wing leaning, to include other things like religion and gun ownership and pro-life, or people that want to live off the grid. We could all be considered threats. In fact, the Department of Homeland Security has indicated so. I think that we are headed down a very dangerous path. I mean, there's been a lot of changes over the last couple of decades in the military anyways, with little timeout cards during basic training and stuff like that. I think that I have to agree with what Tucker Carlson said, that while many of our enemies abroad are trying to strengthen their military, we here at home seem to try to be creating a more gentle military. And I think that's a very dangerous road to go down. Not only are we trying to create a more gentle military, but we're trying to create a military that is much more progressively left-leaning. And at some point in the future, if leadership ever was to arise and try to use the military against the citizenry to impose some new draconian ruling, I'm not so sure that the military would resist that kind of rule, because of the type of training that they're beginning to receive. So I think that, you know, I'm trying to walk a thin line right here with what I'm saying. I don't want to come across as disparaging anyone in the military or our military services in general. But the things that they are pushing, the changes that they are making in our armed services, I believe could have every bit the dangerous repercussions on this nation as the Fed is with inflating our currency, or any other, border policy or anything else. This is a very dangerous road, and we should all take note of it. We should all be aware of what's going on. No matter how prepared and how homesteady you are, the fact that they are pushing very hard to change the ideology, the thinking, the patriotic kind of level that our military troops have always had, and trying to teach them that folks like you and I are the bad guys, that we're extremists, that folks that are right-wing, folks that are gun-toting, America-loving, freedom-loving, God-fearing men and women, that we are the extremists. And that's a very dangerous road to be going down. I don't know where this is going to end. I have a good idea of where it could end, and I don't like the looks of that. I don't know that there's anything you and I can do about it, but I wanted to present this video to make you aware, if you are not, and there's more to it than what I've even said in this video, but to make you aware of the rapid, progressive left, progressive socialist, progressive Marxist ideology that is being crammed down the throats of our troops today. I could go on and on, but it would make for a very long video, because I've read so much just in the last couple of weeks. It's really caught my eye, and I hope that some of you also will take notice of it. And if you have personal stories or personal opinions of this, please leave them in the comments below, because again, I believe personally that this is a very, very dangerous thing that is happening in this country today. This kind of training and this kind of thinking leads militaries to follow orders like they followed in Nazi Germany and in communist Russia. And we may wake up someday and no longer have the American liberty-loving, Constitution-loving, patriotic troops in our military that we've always trusted and believed that we have. All right, folks, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.